We got 7 different stories from 7 different media outlets, you guys. It's time for another episode of Regan's Newsround. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here with a premiere video of Regan's Newsround, where I cover 7 different stories from 7 different media outlets in the UK. And we start here with The Guardian, with the headline that the repair bill for crumbling NHS buildings in England soared to almost £14 billion. NHS providers chief said vital bits of the NHS are literally falling apart after years of underinvestment. And I think everybody is fully aware that there's been a significant lack of investment in our national healthcare service over the last 14 years under the Conservatives, and Labour have got to do something about this. Now, one of their answers to fixing the backlogs and clearing the backlogs to ensuring that more people are not sick anymore and not waiting for treatments and operations is the reliance on the private sector to do this, rather than actually putting money into the national healthcare service themselves, into the state itself. One of the other problems as well is that a lot of money from the government's purse, taxpayer purse, our purse, which is also going into the national healthcare service, it's not staying in there. It's also going into private healthcare as well, which is also becoming problematic. The national healthcare service is weed without a shadow of a doubt in a lot of private companies now, and This bill, obviously, this is in particular whether it comes to our NHS buildings. Why has this never been addressed? Why have the Conservative Party, who have been in power for so long, why have they never addressed these crumbling NHS buildings? And some of these buildings date even further back than 2010, these issues. Something that, and then there was reports at the time, back under a Labour government, the previous Labour government, that there was going to be investment made to fix some of these NHS buildings. And apparently when the Conservatives came in, they basically scrapped that, allegedly. But this is the situation we're in, where a lot of NHS, a lot of hospitals, a lot of buildings where healthcare is provided to people, where there's certain parts of the buildings where they're literally being held up by poles, or they're not using those buildings at all because of using parts of the building at all because they're not deemed safe. And it's ridiculous that one of the 7th wealthiest countries in the world can't seem to find the money to repair the buildings for our NHS buildings. It's ridiculous, it's insane, and it's bonkers, pretty much. This is in particular for England as well, for reference. So the cost of repairing crumbling NHS buildings in England has soared to almost 14 billion. Prompted warnings that patients and staff are at risk from falling roofs and faulty equipment. But remember, the government says they have no money, even though they found £22 billion for a carbon capture project that will never work as well. Just remember that. The repair bill faced by the health service to make its estate fit for purpose has more than trebled from 4.5 billion in 2012 to 2013 to 13.8 billion last year, according to the NHS England data. The latest bill meant that for the first time since record began, it would cost the NHS more to eradicate its maintenance backlog than the 13.6 billion it spends on running the entire estate. And this is from a source from NHS Digital here from The Guardian. Estimated costs to fix the NHS maintenance issue tripled in decades. Costs to eradicate the backlog in £1 billion in cash terms. Obviously dark red, high red, orange red, significant red, light, moderate risk, and obviously very light, low risk there. And you can see the numbers from 2012 onwards, if over the last decade or so. See, it's gotten worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. And the vast majority of this is pretty much, in this graph, is pretty much all under the Conservatives. Labour have been in power for just over 100 days now. A good chunk of that time has been in the summer recess as well, so we do have to take that into account as well. But this is an issue that they do need to address, that is for sure. The figures show that the health service infrastructure fell into a state of serious disrepair as it was starved of capital funding while the Conservatives were in power, NHS officials have said. Vital bits of the NHS are literally falling apart after years of underinvestment and nationality. The safety of patients and staff is at risk, said Saffron Crowley, the Deputy Chief Executive of NHS Providers. We've covered here on this channel about the risks of some of them. There was actually a story about where some of the crumbling roof fell on top of a patient. There was one incident in England where crumbling roof actually fell on top of a patient. I can't remember where it was, but there was an incident where that occurred. So there's already been one or two incidences of the crumbling building showing its the state it is in. The essential repair across across the NHS waiting to be done keeps getting longer, and the costs are rocketing. Eye-watering sums are needed just to patch up buildings and equipment which are very bad way right across hospitals, mental health, community health, and ambulance services. And this is one of the problems that the Conservative government were doing, rather than actually just dumping up the cash to actually fix these, is putting a lot of sticky plasters on these situations, rather than actually deal with the core issue of these NHS buildings, just using any temporary stuff just to keep them going as long as they possibly can in some of these situations, as opposed to actually paying out and dealing with the issue outright, which is something the Conservatives were never doing as well. NHS England has classed 2.7 billion at those repairs as high risk, from being 2.4 billion a year before, because they pose an ongoing danger to people being treated, working in or visiting hospitals and clinics. Those urgent tasks are work that is needed to prevent NHS care providers facing catastrophic failures, major disruption to clinical services, or serious injury or persecution. Matthew Taylor, the chief executive of the NHS provider, said the £13.8 billion bill was deeply worrying, and as a result of the NHS being starved of capital funding for more than a decade. John Boswell-Nabarro of the campaign group We Own It said the incidents such as sewage leaking into NHS operating theatres, rodent infestants at NHS hospitals, out-of-date computer systems, and a failed elevator at that injured an NHS doctor illustrate the problems that can result when capital spending is squeezed. Just all those things, like how can you have sewage leaking into an NHS operating theatre? How is that allowed to happen? Rodent infestation. Hospitals should always be clean. There should never be any kind of infestation. There should be no infestation whatsoever in a hospital. Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, is under pressure to boost NHS capital spending next year in its budget. Next year was presented on the 30th of October. The service needs an extra £6.4 billion in the next 3 years in order to keep its buildings working properly, the NHS Confederation has estimated. Failing buildings and equipment led to clinical services being cancelled or interrupted 3,318 times last year, 63 times a week. The NHS lost almost 14,600 hours of clinical time, worth approximately 7.2 million as a result of the maintenance failure. And that figure only includes the 3 most disrupted incidents in each hospital, according to NHS England data. Stepping Hill Hospital in Stockport lost 2,918 hours of clinical time, worth approximately £581,000, because of the recurring structural issues, the most of any hospital site. It was followed by equipment failures at Dunton Valley Hospital, that's 1,920 hours, and issues with roofs at the Royal Albert Edward Infirmary in Wigan and Stephen Mullet Community Hospital, 1,000 clinical hours each. Imperial College Healthcare NHS Trust in England has had the largest overhaul repair bill of £874 million, name related to its St Mary's Hospital, almost half of which was considered high risk. Meanwhile, NHS England Chair Richard Melding has announced that after holding talks with the Health Secretary Wes Streeting, he is standing down next March, a year earlier than planned. The Guardian reported in July that Labour plans to oust Meldings to replace him with a Labour loyalist if they won power. A Labour loyalist, guys. Does that sound perfectly okay to you? I don't like that. I'd rather have someone in there that's independent rather than someone that's a Labour loyalist. I do apologise for my throat. It's been playing up this morning. But this bill needs to be addressed. They need to put the investment in to get this. This just needs to be just dealt with. Just put the money forward and get these buildings fixed. You know, let's make sure that these are suitable, safe, clean NHS hospital buildings, hospitals, community centres, mental health institutes, whatever it is part of the NHS. Let's make sure these buildings are functioning and workable for the people of England. It's just blatantly obvious we need to get this sorted. Like, no temporary fixes. I don't want sticky plasters. I just want this done. You know, people want this sorted. Put the money up front. Yeah, put the taxpayer money up front and just get it done. Labour, just get it done. Speaking of the budget, guys, this one is from Sky News, this next one for us. The budget turmoil as several government departments fail to agree spending decisions by the deadline. Chancellor Rachel Reeves says there is a £40 billion black hole to fill ahead of the budget, so departments are being asked to find savings. Why are departments being asked to find savings? What this is essentially comes across the minds of austerity in a sort of way to some people. Some people will disagree with that, and that's totally fine to make that assessment. But I'm getting kind of a bit annoyed and tired about hearing about black holes coming out of Labour all the time. Now, we do have to stress this. We knew that there would be skeletons in the closet when Labour came into power. We knew that the Tories would have left things in a worse state than they would have been. We were fully aware of that. Labour were fully aware of that. But it feels like that they are coming up with more numbers to throw at with excuses to make savings than it needs to be. That's how it comes across to me. Now, some people may disagree, but that's the impression that I'm getting here. You know, that more money is needed to fill these so-called black holes. I totally agree with the Labour government's decision to increase public spending. I thought that was really important for workers. But making departments cut more and find more savings when they have been suffering. Many departments have been suffering as a result of the Conservatives, and they're being told to find even more money. That's very big ask for them to do so. And there's been quite a lot of questions about this budget. There's been some political discourse within the Labour government as well. There are some Labour ministers and Labour MPs who are not happy with the talks and the rumours are circulating around this budget as well. So there is nothing nice and rosy about this budget in any way, shape or form that's coming up at the end of this month. We knew it was going to be a bad budget, but is it going to be an austerity budget? And this is something that many people have already come to the conclusion that it's going to be an austerity budget, even though they're stressing that it's not an austerity budget. If you are cutting services, if you are cutting things, it is literally austerity. You can paint it as you don't have to use the word austerity, but if you're making savings or reducing department resource revenues and whatnot, that is still cutting. It is still cutting one way or another. So several government departments have failed to agree their spending settlements by yesterday's deadline, a sign of ongoing turbulence over the budget, Sky News can reveal. A number of departments have still been unable to agree with the Treasury on the scale of cuts that they will be expecting to deliver in the next 2 years, despite discussions stretching back to July. Close of play on Wednesday meant to be the deadline for all major measures agreed for the budget to be sent to the spending watchdog, the Office of Budget Responsibility, the OBR. After this moment, only small changes are meant to be possible in the budget after spending review for the financial year beginning next April. At least one department, which has not settled today, has been expected to strike an agreement with the Treasury as recently as Wednesday evening, suggesting last-minute turbulence. The Treasury played down the significance of the delay, saying it is not unusual, but there is still deep concerns in parts of government of how the budget will land. The Treasury rejected any suggestions that settlements are being imposed on departments who failed to agree their budgets ahead of the Chancellor's statement on the 30th of October. However, the delay and the briefing that has been accompanying this seem to be marked as the difficulty that Chancellor Rachel Reeves and Sir Keir Starmer are having in getting the support of the top team for this budget. This is what I mentioned about getting everyone on board with this budget. Not everyone in Labour is involved with this in any way, shape or form. At least 3 cabinet ministers are understood to have appealed directly to Sir Keir over the head of Rachel Reeves about the budget. The Treasury believes it has never made a secret of the scale of the tough decisions necessary and says there should be no surprise that the decisions need to be made in this budget. As I said, we know that there are going to be challenges ahead with this budget, and that we know that. The question is, how bad is it going to be, and is there going to be some positive things in this budget? The Chancellor's got to give something. Has to give some positive stuff in this budget, because if it doesn't, I know people are already angry with some of the decisions that this government has made. The winter fuel payments has been outrageous. They're keeping on the 2-child benefit cap unless they change that out of the budget as well, which part of me is kind of hoping, but I can also understand some people losing faith in that as well. But some of the decisions that Labour have been making have not been in any way helpful to anyone whatsoever. I generally my position has always been that they are making these are political choices that they're choosing to make, guys. Political choices. So when people say those who are staunch defenders of the Labour are trying to protect this or trying to claim that they need to do this and X, Y, and Z, and it's just like, no, these are political choices. Some of these choices are completely and totally political. They don't need to make it. They don't need to make life more difficult. Like the winter fuel payment does not need to happen in any way, shape, or form. It does not, guys. It really doesn't. The next one I've got for you guys is from the BBC. This one here. So ministers are to give magistrates more sentencing powers. So ministers are giving magistrates new sentencing powers in an effort to ease record delays to criminal trials, despite the fact they are likely to temporarily push the prison population back up. So, as you guys know, some of you guys may or may not know, when the Labour government came into power, there was a major prison crisis straight away off the bat. Because we had, they were basically already overstretched and they were struggling. So the government had to basically introduce measures to basically let prisoners out early as a result of the Conservatives not building enough prisons, not dealing with the crisis. They basically left it on Labour's lap to deal with the prison crisis. That's essentially what they did here. Now, they want to make sure that they are tough on crime and show that they are tough on crime, Labour. But this decision, obviously, to give magistrates new sentencing powers to ease record delays to criminal trials. I am all for, especially some of the most severe and most heinous of crimes, I'm all for them getting banged up, thrown behind bars, the most heinous of crimes, of course. And there is obviously this concern that the prison population will push back up as a result. We do have a backlog in the courts, in the criminal courts at the moment, because over the last 14 years of austerity, there have been a reduction in judges, in barristers, and some of the courts in England in particular have been cut back as a result of austerity. So that is also, and because of that, it's made it more difficult for people's cases to be heard. There was a story I covered, I believe, earlier this year, or last year, I believe, where rape cases, people had to wait up to 5.5 years before their case could be heard in front of a judge, which is absolutely insane. So that's how messed up the justice system is right now. And it's another thing that's like, I generally do hope that Labour get this under control and crack down on, especially on those who have caused convicted murders, rapes, sexual assault, violence, the highest of crimes, are facing the wrath of the law and not being allowed to get away with it just because of how messed up our justice system is at the moment. I also know it's going to take time to fix as well. I hope that Labour do get on top of it, but I also hope that they don't target people with less, target more harshly on people on much lesser crimes, like, for example, protesters. I don't want protesters getting thrown in jail unless, of course, they've been violently assaulted, or there's certain levels there I have on that. Like, I feel like a lot of crimes are going straight to prison, whereas I feel a lot of them can be easily can pay the time by doing community service instead. The lesser of crimes, of course, but it's each to their own. And I think they should be taking some ideas from Europe, as well, about how to deal with this situation as well. So magistrates in England and Wales will be able to jail offenders for up to 12 months from November to stop cases clogging up the Crown Courts. The plan was first tried by the former Conservative government before being scrapped as jail failed, but Labour said its version will work long term. Justice Secretary Shabina Mahmood told MPs that it will ultimately help slash the record numbers of suspects being held waiting a trial. The move is already facing a backlash from criminal lawyers who view it as a sticking plaster for the chronic lack of cash in a crisis-ridden system. And this is the problem here. Like everything, it needs investment because it's been cut like another department. Because of austerity, they need investment put in. And this is exactly what I believe it is, a sticking plaster to help with them for the time being. Are they going to be able to put money in? I don't know. Are they going to get money from the budget? I doubt it. Magistrates in England and Wales have historically been limited to sentencing offenders to a maximum of 6 months for a single offence. More serious cases were left for judges in Crown Courts. There is already a backlog of around 68,000 cases in those higher courts, and a record 17,000 suspects are on remand waiting for a trial. That backlog was primarily caused by cuts before the pandemic, but exacerbated by the 2020 national shutdown and later strikes by barristers. Last month, as the prisons reached capacity, the government began an emergency plan to let some offenders leave jail on a monitored license after serving 40% of their term behind bars. Yeah, it used to be 50%, but they've reduced it to 40% to help alleviate the crisis with the jail prison system. The scheme aims to buy the system breathing space as the new government looks at major reforms of how sentencing should work. Ms. Mahmood told MPs that while the early release scheme is now working as planned, there was still an acute problem in jails holding too many remand prisoners. She said that by giving magistrates the power to decide cases that would lead to jail sentences of up to 12 months, the record remand population would begin to fall. In turn, with fewer suspects having to go to Crown Courts, judges would gain an extra 2,000 days a year to deal with the most serious cases to start reducing the unprecedented delays. Critics say that the Conservatives' early attempts at this plan between 2022 and 2023 failed because it led more people in jail with very little change in the backlog. The modelling for the new government's projections will be published when the new rules are formally presented to MPs. I'm sure that Labour would have looked at these numbers and all that. The hope is that while it will increase more people into prisons, obviously if it clears the cases, obviously then it's a good thing as well, because you want to make sure that those who have suffered the victims obviously get the justice that they deserve at least. BBC understands that official projections suggest that the short-term population could turn out to be as little as 100 if the plan succeeds in getting more remand cases through the courts. Outlined the plans of the Commons, Ms. Mahmood said ministers had to make tough decisions that were ducked by their predecessors. This government inherited a criminal justice system in crisis, with dangerously overcrowded prisons and victims waiting far too long to see justice, she said. This marks a further step towards addressing the deep challenges in our criminal justice system, both reducing the record remand population in our jails and delivering swift justice for victims. The plan has already been met with dismay by criminal barristers. Mary Pryor KC, chair of the Criminal Bar Association, said, "This will simply make things worse. This is a knee-jerk reaction done without consulting, once again, the criminal barristers or solicitors who deal with every day with these cases. This suggestion has been tried before but removed very quickly." Right, so they haven't even... if they haven't even consulted them, that's a really crap decision by the government. Why are you not talking to the experts in these areas? Labour, what the hell's wrong with you? If that is true. Doubling magistrates and maximum sentencing powers will only increase pressures on reducing prison space by speeding and raising the much bigger sentence prison population. Mark Beadle, chair of the Magistrates Association, said its members welcome the new powers to help deliver swifter justice. "I know our members and colleagues will take up this increased responsibility with professionalism and integrity and will, as always, strive to deliver the highest quality of justice in the courts," he said. I mean, I hope so, but this bit here, if Mary Pryor, who is the Criminal Bar Association, saying this is claiming that this is done without consulting. If this has been done without consulting, then this is a very bad call by Labour. Like we've said here, we have to listen to the experts. Are they listening to the experts? Are they taking advice from the experts? And is this a knee-jerk reaction to try and show that they are tough on crime? Is this just to make them look like that they're actually being tough on crime? Is that the whole point of it? I think that's the question. I mean, we do know that, as I said, there is a crisis in the court systems. There is a crisis in the prison systems. And we do have a situation where we need to show criminals that they cannot be allowed to get away with things that they do, in particular here in England and Wales. But are we just putting sticky plasters over the situation right now? To some people, that seems to be looking the case. But what do you guys honestly think? Let me know down in the comments below what you guys think on that. If you haven't already, please hit the like button. We greatly appreciate it. And share this across social media so others are notified of this video. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider subscribing because it really does help support the channel. Otherwise, if you want to financially support me, you can become a YouTube member for as little as 99p, or you can do any super chats or super gifts, super thanks as well. Those are available if you want to financially support me and go one step further. Buy me a coffee or joining me on Patreon. Links for all of them are in the description. There's a links button called Linktree. If you click that link, it takes you to all my social medias And it's very easy. There are many other ways you can contact me if you want to just contact me through there, as well as joining our Discord community and other related and other non-political related content if you're interested in as well. The links tree is the links button there. It shows you all access to all my social medias if you guys wanted to have a look at them. So thanks to everyone who's had a look or who has liked, shared and subscribed. Greatly appreciate it. This next one, guys, is from an exclusive from the Eye, and it's about assisting dying. We've talked a bit about it before, but I wanted to share this one from a different perspective on it. So disabled people are really scared by assisting dying bill towards Tanni Grey-Thompson. The peer fears the new law will open the door for vulnerable people being pushed into seeing death as their best option. Now, this is a perfectly understandable headline and perfectly understandable to someone to make that comment about assisting dying. While I'm someone that is for assisting dying, for me it's very important that and I've spoken about this before, how important that the barriers are put in place. Excuse me, apologies. That barriers are put in place, hoops are put in place to make it difficult for people to be able to proceed with assisting dying. It has to be a case of, if they are generally dying, that they should only on those points that they should be allowed to die, that they want to die as well, and they have that person's consent. There should be some circumstances where if they are unable to speak for themselves, or if in the past that they have spoken to their relatives and loved ones, like if they're in a vegetative state, is that something that the closest families want for that person to be for their life to be ended sooner. And also about how to end that person's life as well. And obviously one of the things is that, and I totally understand this point here about people being pushed into it as well. I want to make this clear: if somebody is not on death's bed, if somebody is not close to being dying in any way, shape or form, they should in no way, shape or form have this option put available to them, unless they are actually generally dying and they want their life to be ended. Unless those circumstances are put in and they are put through rigorous checks and whatnot by doctors and experts on this, they should not have this option put in front of them in any way, shape or form. And I think that's really, really important, that we don't set an example. This is about this assisting dying. To me personally, it's about those who are in vegetative states, those who want to die, those who are dying, and rather than sitting waiting for their time to end, they want it to end now, as opposed to later on, whether they're in a vegetative state or they're in a great deal amount of pain, whatever their circumstances is. If they want it, if that person wants it, and the family want this as well, then that should be something that should be given. But there is also this fear here, which Tanni Grey-Thompson, rightly so, is pointing out here. So, vulnerable disabled people could end up being pushed and coerced into death if assisting dying is made legal, Tanni Grey-Thompson has warned. So, the crossbench spear and former disabled athlete used an eye interview to speak out on the day the private members bill would be given terminal ill people in England and Wales with 6 months to live the right to end their life. Baroness Grey-Thompson fears the bill opens the door for struggled disabled people to view this as their best option. There isn't a measurement for intolerable pain, she told the Eye. I've had people say to me, if my life was like yours, I'd kill myself. It come back to assumptions on disability. We live in a pretty abstract society. The campaigner, one of the UK's most prominent voices for disabled people, said that they have been telling her how frightened they were by the current debate and the prospect of the change in the law. It's about getting the right protection and the right support for everyone in society, not just for people who have louder voices or have platforms, she said. I'm not speaking on behalf of any other disabled people, but a lot write to me to say they are really scared. And that's perfect. And she's absolutely right to point that out. Absolutely right to point it out, especially for disabled people. She's completely right to point this out, and I do understand those concerns. I really, really do. The terminally ill adults end-of-life bill was introduced in the Commons on Wednesday by Labour MP Kim Ledbetter. The topic invokes strong reactions on both sides, with Dame Riske calling the current law cruel, and Miss Ledbetter labelling it unjust. Lady Grey-Thompson disagrees and said, "Our job in Parliament is not to make laws on emotions." It's not on emotion. I don't agree with this premise that this is something to do with emotions. No, this is not about emotions. This is about, in particular, the assisted dying. And this is my position, is that if, as I've said this before, the emotions should not matter to this. It is about, is that person dying? Is that person in a hospital? Is that person in a chair? Is that person in a vegetative state? Is that person in a great deal amount of pain, knowing that they are going to die? And rather than put them through whatever it is, 6 months or a year left that they have of their life, rather than put them through that, this is where it should come into play. The option of this should come into play, and the option should be there for them. That's where it is for me. If they are dying, if they are not dying, this should not be recommended. This should not be allowed in any way, shape, or form. If it can be proved that they are actually dying, and there is a case for it, then it should be at least heard. But if they're not, if they are not dying, then they should not be allowed to be anywhere near this topic of discussion at all. I don't agree with this assessment. This is a law on emotions. This is not on a law on emotions. This is about people's right to choose to end their life. And for me, I don't think it's fair and it's right that people have to pay out huge sums of their own money to go to Switzerland or any other country that allows assisted dying for them to end their life. I don't think that's right. I don't think it's fair on them. I don't think it's fair on the families and friends of those loved ones who go out, who take them all the way to Switzerland just so they can end their life. It's not right. The choice should be allowed for them to be made in England, with the strongest of protections to ensure that this is not exploited as well. She added that years ago it would have been in favour of the law change, but the more I research and read worries me. Her concerns have been fueled by reports of the level of support the assisted dying bill has among MPs, and that they not only support the legislation but also pushing for its expansion. The peer said she opposes the status as a private member's bill because she believes it will limit the time and resources needed to unearth vital information on the process and methodology of assisted dying. The devil is always in the details, she said. I don't know the answers, but there are things that need to come out before the bill gets passed. People need to know what it will be in reality. I do think there needs to be clear. It needs to be very clear about what is admitted as an assisted dying and what is not. I do agree on that. If it's not very clear, then it is something that I think if they're not very clear about what constitutes assisted dying in the bill, then I do agree it should be paused if they are not very clear on it, MPs. And given this, she's calling for a detailed debate and not a vote on the principle, and we will figure it out later. She's particularly concerned because missteps in the bill concerning death will have irreversible consequences. There is no going back to peer return. There is no safety net. And she argues that misinformation remains an issue. People think you have a pill, flick a switch, and you're gone. But there are cases around the world where would take hundreds of hours to die, she told the Eye. There's a slight misdemeanor that people think it's 1 or 2 pills. There's loads, handful of pills. Lady Grey-Thompson, an 11-time Paralympic gold medalist, also criticised the rhetoric around the personal choice, saying it serves as a simple soundbite. Choice is quite a middle-class construct. There's a whole pile of people who have no choice, she says. If people feel like they are only surviving, people will be pushed, coerced, or even say it's a settled wish because their life is so awful. It's so easy for... I'm sorry for Lady Grey-Thompson, but it's so easy for you to say that. No, it's personal choice does matter. Personal choice really does matter in this. And I reject wholeheartedly her position about this as a simple soundbite. This is not a simple soundbite. This is a very delicate and sensitive matter. And people should have that choice. I totally understand the point of being pushed or coerced. Totally understand that point. And I totally agree with that position. But to call it a simple standby, I think that's quite insulting, if I'm honest. I really do. Assisted dying was last debated in the Commons in 2015, but since the political makeup of Parliament has changed dramatically. Keir Starmer supported a change in 2015 alongside the Energy Secretary Ed Miliband, has allowed ministers to have a free vote on the bill. Asked whether she felt it was a fair decision, Lady Grey-Thompson responded, "It's the right thing for the Prime Minister to do, although prior to the election he publicly supported changes in the law. I think if the government feels strongly about it, it should have been in the manifesto, not left to a private member's bill." Concerns over palliative care surrounds the debate over assisting dying. And earlier this year, a King College study found 65% of adults worry about access to such care, with 41% believing the NHS allocates too few resources to it. Lady Grey-Thompson described palliative care as a postcode lottery and said there was a public misunderstanding over what is being proposed. When you ask people what they understand about assisted suicide, people think you mean palliative care, like a few hours from dying, not 6 months, she said. While Miss Leadbear's bill has been praised as adding dignity to death, the peer questioned the dystopian nature of how it can be progressed. If people generally have 6 months left to live, they're in a great deal, as I said, they're in a great deal of pain and agony. They should be allowed to make that decision themselves. I totally understand the ramifications of her concerns, but a part of me feels like that she's trying to stop giving people that choice because of the concerns around it. That part of me, if I get her concerns, I really, really do, but a part of me feels like that she's talking about this because she doesn't want to give it, because of how she feels about, especially as someone who works with disabled people in particular, and concerned about their well-beings. You can't assume every family is loving and cares about their family members, she cautioned. Yep, 100% agree with that. Raising the issue of people who feel like a burden, who are affected by financial issues. A colleague of mine once said, where there is a will, there is a relative, she added. While Miss Libbetter, the MP for Spon Valley in West Yorkshire, insists her law will apply to only those who are terminally ill, Lady Grey-Thompson fear it will be a thin edge of the wedge. That's it, terminally ill. You have to be terminally ill. If you're not terminally ill, you're not going to get out. You're not going to get it. It will just get eroded very quickly, she said. It has in every jurisdiction that has allowed assisting dying. It has either changed in the law or practice or has become looser. The second reading of Miss Lear's bill will take place in the Commons on the 29th of November. Lady Grey-Thompson said the debate was bound to bring up huge numbers, but urged, just don't look at the top line stuff. She's made some very powerful points in this piece, guys, and I totally understand. She's made some powerful points, and I agree with them of a lot of things. But there are also some parts where I feel like she feels that not enough clear detail has been discussed about it. Now, if there's not been enough clear detailed discussion about it, then I'm all for that. But we also have to remember that there are a lot of people out there who have to go to Switzerland to get their assisting dying, and in it, or countries that have it, and it's just not fair on those people who are in these situations where they want to make that choice, they want to make that conscious decision, and it comes out of their pocket, out of their own money to do so as well. I totally understand the concerns and raised by Tanni Grey-Thompson. I really, really do. I cannot stress that enough. She's made absolutely some valid points there, but there are parts of it where I feel like that a part of me feels like that there is a case of perhaps she's not too keen on it as well. I understand the divisiveness over assisting suicide. I understand this. I totally understand this. And I can understand some people in the chat maybe feel that this is too dangerous to have as well. I totally respect that opinion. I really do. But I think this is something that we need to have. And like I said, as long as there are the barriers in place that make it extremely difficult for people to have that, then I think it will be okay, guys. I generally do. So, guys, we're going to take a little break. We got 3 more articles to cover through here on Regan's Newsround, because we cover 7 different stories here in the UK. We got one from the Independent, one from the Times, and one from Byline Times here. But before we go to them, we're going to have a little funny video to kind of break the ice a little bit, have a little bit of fun. Especially when videos go as long as these do, it does help. Break things a little bit. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video here. It's an old one from the YouTube channel Larry and Paul. They have a series called Broken News. I do recommend checking out their YouTube channel, youtube.com/Larry and Paul. This one is called Pret and Manager Saves the UK. So I hope you guys enjoy this one. Oh.
Welcome to Broken News. After years of falling revenue, there's finally some good news for the beleaguered British High Street. The fancy fast food fuckers Pret and Manger say they've signed a deal to take over every vacant storefront across the UK. Our reporter has more.
Back in 1984, when Pret a Manger first opened here in Hampstead, some said it could never work as a business. But not bothering to properly list ingredients or allergens on packaging, soups that are saltier than Captain Birdseye's dick end, or salads that cost as much as a combi van haven't held the company back. Now, the business model of putting a branch of your business within 2 meters of another branch of your business, which itself is just 1 meter away from another branch of your business, and then repeating that over and over and over and over and over again, seems to have worked. And Pret a Manger are set to take over every single vacant lot in every British town and city. The company says it's delighted to further expand on its efforts to convince everyone that its food is healthy. Industry experts say the success of Pret has been down to one single masterstroke. It was going to be called Ready to Eat, but bosses translated that into bullshit French, so it seemed all dead posh in that, and they could charge you £3 for a banana or whatever. Back to you.
What a lovely story. That's all from Broken News. You're up to date.
Hope you guys enjoyed that one from Broken News, guys. Like I said, youtube.com/Larry and Paul. Do check out the YouTube channel to do wonderful content. If you're using social media, Twitter as well, they also have a Twitter. They also post them on X or Twitter as well on there as well. Great stuff from them. Always a nice one there. And that was an old. I know it's a bit of an old one, but I've got a new one for you guys if you stay to the end of the show as well. So the next one I've got for you guys. Unfortunately, there are some adverts in the background of this. Hopefully, you guys won't notice it from where I put the screen here. This is more about the budget, obviously, and obviously hearing from one of the experts, I think is really, really important here. So this one from The Independent, the headline, the budget 2024, Martin Lewis sends a warning over buy now, pay later crackdown. So the money expert said that the Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, rang him personally to tell him about the reform. So let's read a bit more into this before I give my thoughts. So Martin Lewis has issued a warning over a new crackdown on buy now, pay later products. So the money expert has cautioned consumers it is a case of buy now, get products later. Ministers have announced that millions of shoppers are to be protected by new rules for BNPL as they are known. Mr. Lewis welcomed the change, saying the buy now, pay later is now unambiguous at online checkouts. So the fact that it's never been regulated is a travesty, and I and others have long campaigned on. The last Chancellor promised to regulate, and then the tumbleweeds rolled as he went silent. So I'm delighted that the new government has quickly restarted the process. Well, we started the process, or whoever keeps it on. So what is this money buy now, pay later? Well, it literally says it's on the tin. Literally, you buy the product now and you pay it back, pay the money for it later, isn't it? But it could also be a scheme that obviously can take advantage of businesses and whatnot. And people, there's obviously some cases where paying it later can also prove troublesome for some people as well. So Mr. Lewis, who said the Chancellor Rachel Reeves rang him personally to tell him about the change, said that the BNPL could be useful, allowing those who need to spread payments to do so interest-free. That's the key word, interest-free there. But he criticised that it has been sold as a lifestyle choice and not a debt, and push for instant buys or even takeaways regulations means firms must be overt that it is a debt and have properly affordable rules, and it will crucially let people go to the ombudsman if things go wrong. And he warned it's not coming in 2026 until 2026, so people should still be very wary until then. Yeah. But there's a lot of people, there's a lot of people in the UK who are in mountains of debt because they are unable to pay their bills, so they turn to loan sharks and whatnots to loans to keep them going, and unfortunately, it makes things even worse for them. I don't like this. Me personally, I don't like the premise of buying things and then having to pay it back later, because it just becomes something that becomes a stress. A worry, a stress and a worry sort of thing. But then I'd be a hypocrite, because obviously there are some things like, for example, your mobile phone. When normally you buy a mobile phone, for some people, you have like a 2-3 year contract with them, don't you? Or something like that you continuously pay. It's a different feeling for everyone. I think most people do like this. But the point there, obviously, of saying that it's a debt, it is still a debt that you still need to pay back at some point. And that can have and as if, you know, your problems already when it comes to bills here, in particular in England, already struggle. It's just another stressful thing to worry about. The market for BNPL has exploded in recent years, in part because of the cost of living crisis, as consumers have been lured by the promise of interest-free future payments for items that they could not otherwise afford. Under the plans now, buy now, pay later companies would be under the supervision of the Financial Conduct Authority, FCA, under the Consumer Credit Act, ensuring that users receive clear information, avoid unaffordable borrowing, and have strong rights when issues arise. This needs to be done. The FTA and the Consumer Credit Act need to have this control. There's no question about that. The Treasury Minister Tulip Sadig said millions of people use buy now, pay later to manage their finances, but the previous government had dithered and delayed and left them unprotected. We promised to take action before the election, and we are now delivering. Our approach will give shoppers access to key protections provided from other forms of credit, while providing the sector with the certainty it needs to innovate and grow. And I hope so. I hope so. They do push this into fruition, and I think it's actually very good that that Martin Lewis, the money expert, was actually called up and told about this as well, because he is the person that many people in the UK go to when they have, on his website moneysavingexpert.com. He is the guy that comes to when it comes to being able to save money when you're in financial troubles, how you can cut back and make savings and costs. But over the last 14 years, he has struggled harder and harder and harder to be able to provide people with the benefits of help that they need on all sorts of things. He is basically he's a very staunchly neutral when it comes on politics. His job is basically to help people look after their money and give them the best value for money. He's not a conservative. He's certainly not a Labour. He's not a political. He doesn't want to be in any way associated with politics. But obviously, his views and his knowledge on this stuff is really well documented. And he also has they also have a YouTube channel, I believe, as well, that Martin Lewis every now and again uses as well as I believe a TV show on the BBC, I believe it is as well. Yeah, he is someone I do recommend checking out Martin Lewis and his website. If you are somebody who's listening to this and are financially struggling, perhaps he might have some advice for you. Whatever that might be, it's worth checking out. moneysavingexpert.com. Do check it out. It might make a difference to you guys. The next one I've got for you guys is one from the Times here. It's one that has been spoken about time and time again, and I know it's a story that we've spoken about on numerous occasions, but it's one it's still problematic, and Labour kind of just sticking their heads in the sand over it, really. Ministers accepting freebies should be a crime, says a Labour peer. The comments follow revelations that Lisa Nandy was loaned designer clothes a day before saying she would never accept free clothes from donors. Now, I don't know how true this is from Lisa Nandy. If this is true, this is extremely embarrassing, especially if she said she would never accept free clothes. It's already been pretty embarrassing. Now, I know the premise that people will make about the Conservatives. Yes, the Conservatives were worse. Yes, Boris Johnson took out a lot of money. Yes, they didn't follow the rules. I get all that, and I'm totally in agreement with you that Labour should be hammered into the ground. Yeah, about their way of taking donations and freebies and whatnot. Totally understand that. But when you see Labour taking the gifts and freebies that they're taking, it's very hypocritical for them to talk about it, even if they are following the rules. It's especially when people are in a cost of living crisis and people hear about it. It leaves a very sour taste in people's mouths, knowing that Keir Starmer got to meet Taylor Swift, for example, and go to concerts for her, go to a concert for her as well, while people are struggling to make ends meet. Doesn't really sound very appealing, does it? You can understand the frustration from people who are struggling out there. So, accepting hospitality and gifts by ministers should be made a criminal offence, a Labour peer and anti-corruption campaigner has said. The most effective antidote amid anger over senior ministers taking freebies would be to ban the practice, Lord Skiddy suggested. He came as Lisa Nandy, the Culture Secretary, is found to have been loaned clothes from a luxury fashion agency one day before claiming that she never accepted free clothes from donors. Yeah, Most effective thing, ban the practice. Just ban it. I couldn't agree more. The row over freebies has escalated after Down Street admitted Sir Keir Starmer met Taylor Swift and her mother to show at a show to which he got free tickets. The Prime Minister later repaid the cost. This has been urged to say whether they put pressure on Scotland Yard to bolster security for Swift by giving her taxpayer-funded VVIP police escort before later receiving free tickets to her shows in London. I don't know. Like this thing about Taylor Swift, like if she's been not given enough security, she should have been given the security. Like, and Taylor Swift going anywhere. I mean, she is a mega star. She's a mega star. And the last thing you want is anything and the last thing you want is any if you want a global star like Taylor Swift not coming to like Wembley because of security reasons. It's a boost. It's literally a boost for the economy. You know, it's a tiny boost, but it's still a boost in nonetheless because you want people to go out and spend the money in the British economy. Swift shows in Vienna, Austria's capital, were cancelled in August after a terror plot was foiled. The issue of freebies was raised in Parliament by Skisser, who told peers, the front benches may well cross cocktail sticks, but people look at undue hospitality and gifts and see the whole thing as sleaze and corruption that damages trust in institutions of government. 100%. This is the problem. Yeah, it doesn't matter whether you're Conservative or Labour, whatever political party establishment you are. If you're accepting hospitality and gifts, you're seen to be corrupted because because people will always expect something from you in return. In my view, the most effective answer to make the gifting of gifts and hospitality above a certain amount a criminal offence. Baroness Butler Slows, a retired judge and crossbench peer, said, as an independent, I was glad that this government came in. What upsets me was the high moral tone that your government came in on and then had freebies. Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I wonder if this government recognises that I'm not the only person who is upset by the combination of high moral tone and freebies. However, Minister denied there is any suggestion of hypocrisy. That is 100% bullshit. There is absolute hypocrisy here. Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, admitted to Times Radio that she had been in a very privileged position, had been offered free tickets for her and her family to a Swift concert. Asked if Labour were guilty of hypocrisy, he said, I don't accept that. Well, you don't accept that, but we do. But I can understand how a lot of people would look at it. When they would see it in a certain way, I completely understand how we have responsibility as politicians, which I follow and honour in terms of my responsibilities in line with the rules. I can absolutely tell you that every single day what matters to me is the work that we are doing as a government to support our children and families, and that's what upmost in my mind every day. The latest declaration of financial interest by MPs showed on Nancy accepted a loan of clothing from the 223 agency on September 20th. The following day, Nancy appeared on Sky News to answer questions about why Starmer's wife had been given free clothes. After she herself had accepted free clothes from a donor, Nancy said, I haven't accepted free clothes from a donor before. I haven't and I don't. A source close to Nancy told the Mail Online, can't take Mail Online seriously, that her words were accurate as the clothing was a loan not given to her by a donor and was for an outfit for a London-based Canadian-British designer who she wanted to support. Well, either way, it's still dodgy in every way, shape or form, even though it's legal. It's still, I call it legal corruption. It's still legal corruption in any way, shape or form. Labour should ban it outright, but we know they're not going to do that. If they do, the Conservatives will scream and panic to the cows come home because they would lose out on, because they would no longer have no longer have their donor masters feeding them the money that they want for the lifestyles that they have. But I do agree it should be banned outright, me personally. But I understand some people might try to justify that, try to justify Labour's position on it and say, no, the Conservatives were worse. Yes, the Conservatives were worse, but it doesn't mean to say that Labour should be able to do it as well, even though it's completely fair, even though it's completely legal. It still doesn't look right to me in any way, shape or form. So this last one I've got for you guys is from Byline Times. A reminder, if you haven't already, please hit the like button and share across social media. If you haven't, so I was notified of this premiere video. If you haven't subscribed, please consider subscribing because it really does help support the channel. Help me get to 2,000 subscribers by the end of this year. I would like to get to 2,000 subscribers, so you can help me by doing that, by hitting that subscribe button. We greatly appreciate it. So this one from Byline Times: from the sea to the Thames, ocean rowing MPs bid to put climate and nature at the heart of everything that this government does. The Liberal Democrat and former ocean rower Dr. Roel Savage is challenging the government's narrow environmental plans. And I'm glad that someone is talking about this. You have a climate crisis here, not just in the UK, but on the global stage. We know that there is a climate issue. We know that this Labour government are being influenced by oil and gas companies, and don't tell me that they're not, because you don't implement a £22 billion carbon capture project to allow natural gas to continue going when you know that such carbon capture projects have never worked in the last 50 goddamn years, and £22 billion that they just happen to find for the project as well. So don't play toil with me that Labour aren't having some kind of a second thoughts here. Now, in hindsight, I'd like to think that they are going to be pushing more for solar and wind, and perhaps even nuclear energy. Even though I don't agree premise with nuclear energy, I'd rather do that than relying on oil and gas for our energy security here in the UK. I totally understand the premise of when people argue about solar farms in saying that it's not always sunny. That's absolutely true, but it still provides us with free energy. People will make the argument that we're not always windy. Again, I understand that premise, but we are a freaking island. There is wind all around us, so we can generate energy from that as well. Some people made the argument that even if we relied on those two sources, it would not be enough energy to sped up the whole of the UK. Then we have to go in. Then we'll go with nuclear then as a third and final option. I don't want to use nuclear, but I'm prepared to accept nuclear power plants if it means sustaining us and providing us with the energy we need, our own energy security, and not having to rely on outsourced energy. Because I don't want us being affected, especially with oil and gas. I don't want us being affected by the global markets. We want to reduce that as much as possible, and the oil. The oil and gas that we have our own here should not be going on the global market anyway. Should be going straight into Scotland's coffers, especially because most of it comes from them. But we know that's not happening anyway. And we're going to be opening up even more oil in the Rosebank as well, which is obviously outrageous to say the least. So let's read what this has to say here. So after Prime Minister's questions on Wednesdays, MPs will get up one after another to present the titles of legislation they want to push through as backbenchers. Then we need government support to get over the line. The former ocean rower and new Lib Dem MP, Dr. Roel Savage, will present the Climate and Nature Bill backed by climate groups, including the Zero Hour Campaign. The CAN Bill, which has been pushed by environmental groups since 2020, would ensure that the UK government creates a joint-up plan to tackle the crisis in climate and nature, which backers argue are deeply intertwined. I don't know if Labour will support this, or if they have already supported it or rejected it already, but I'm all for any ideas, especially one from cross-party consensus to help reduce emissions here in the UK. It will require the government to cut emissions in line with 1.5 degrees Celsius, ensuring UK's emissions are reduced rapidly for the last chance of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees above pre-industrial levels. But at the heart of it is also to not only halt but also receive the decline in nature, setting it measurably on the path to recovery by 2030. It will also require public bodies to take responsibility for the overseas carbon footprint, both in terms of planet warming emissions and ecological destruction. Restoring nature would have to be prioritised in decision making alongside ending fossil fuel production and imports as rapidly as possible. To secure buy-in, it would give people a say through a climate and nature assembly, and is an attempt to bring in voters together through a more deliberate form of participation to work out the solutions needed. The bill could have monumental implications for how the government works, and Britain's chances of slashing emissions as well as protecting and expanding natural habitats. By the way, if you hear a cat in the background, don't worry about it. It's just Jasper. He's totally fine. He's had food. He's just being annoying if you do hear meowing. So what was the process going through the ballot of MPs to propose your bill? Byline asks. So she says, the success of the bill depends on public engagement. There is already much support for the bill. My mailbox is enrolled with people urging me to pick up the Climate and Nature Bill. It is a subject close to my heart. It has been an environmental campaigner for the last 20 years. It's essentially a lottery. There's a big book with numbers from 1 to 650, and each MP writes their name next to a number. They draw numbers from a glass bowl from 20 to 1. The higher up the ballot you are, the more opportunities you have to debate it. It's an amazing opportunity to bring a private member's bill, but it also has to go through due process. We need at least 102 MPs here on a Friday, which is usually a constituency day. It will be voted on to go through the committee and law stages. It's a long journey, but I know about long journeys from my ocean rowing career. Why is it personal to you, and why does this matter? She says, as soon as I found out my number had been drawn, I knew I wanted to give something environmental. We're not short of environmental issues to tackle. Given my time and in water, I immediately thought of all issues, which is top of my mind in constituency South Corrix. We're getting issues with flooding and sewage getting into our rivers. Well, I will say, obviously, that the sewage, obviously, something that Labour are aware of, and that is something they need to get on top of. Obviously, they're obviously implementing stronger powers to offer, but the long-term goal is obviously putting the water companies back into public ownership is something that I want to see, because our water should be belonging to us, the state. Shouldn't be something owned by private companies. 20 years ago, the level of awareness from what it is now, the former Green MP Caroline Lucas first presented a version of the Climate and Nature Bill in 2020. But awareness and desire for a change has been growing, and I like to think that I've contributed to that growing awareness along with countless environmental campaigners and organisations. We've got a better chance in 2024 than ever before, with the UN conference COP16 and COP29 coming up on biodiversity and climate change. This will be at the forefront of people's minds. If we don't get this through, I hope that we at least move the conversation forward significantly. I hope the government realises that climate and nature are inextricably linked. I do believe that Labour does believe that, but how much of that they will push for is another matter. We're often aware that climate change has detrimental impacts on nature, but what we have done to nature has helped create the climate crisis on the two issues that are linked like hand in glove. We need to start fixing them in tandem, and at the moment the government is very focused on net zero to the exclusion of almost everything else. Yeah. Human history is full of examples where we fixate on one narrow metric without considering the collateral damage. We need to take a more joint-up approach. This is something I thought about extensively, including during my doctorate. I couldn't agree more with that bit there. Have policymakers focus on net zero to the detriment of other aspects of protecting the environment ecologically, they ask. Yes, that is, in my view, net zero is important, but we need a joint-up approach. Nature has a crucial role in helping us reach net zero. Healthy soil from regenerating farming practices is an effective carbon sink, then degraded soil. It could also hold more water, mitigating the impact of climate change like sudden rainfall that create floods. Water connects everything and is a great metaphor for the nature as a holistic system. When we focus on just one aspect, we won't develop a successful strategy. We must recognise that everything is connected. 100% agree. I'm glad the current government is taking action on climate, but it seems to be trying to technologise its way out of the problem by encouraging the development of large solar farms, which I don't necessarily agree with within the first weeks of Labour coming to power. I do think they do play an impact, but I totally understand it. I totally understand the position. The minerals for solar power come from overseas, are refined overseas, and the panels are manufactured overseas. This isn't really an end-of-life plan for solar panels. We might get emissions down to zero, but there's a lot of embedded carbons in the extraction, refinement, and manufacturing of solar powers that we're not accounted for. All that costs emissions to bring the materials you need to create the solar panels as well, if we're getting them all from abroad as well. Another question is, but we are not going to stay with 1.5 degrees without massive expansion in solar and other forms of renewable energy, are we? She says there's that argument, but many emissions are incurring overseas in the process of manufacturing solar panels, and we're not including that in the calculations. One feature in the Climate and Nature Bill is that it calls for including carbon emissions incurring overseas in the production of goods that we use here. That's a very good point. Climate change doesn't represent national boundaries. The climate doesn't care whether carbon emissions are incurring during the extraction in Africa or South America or here. The carbon is still being emitted. Do you have the backing of your party in this bill? This has been asked. It's up to each MP. The Climate and Nature Bill goes a bit further than the Lib Dem policy. We already have the environmental policies as a party, which is one of the reasons why I chose Liberal Democrats and why I decided to stand for Parliament. This is why she became a Liberal Democrat. The support of my colleagues has been brilliant. We did a photo shoot last week, and I'm quite moved to see how many showed up. Everybody looked genuinely proud and happy to be supporting my private member's bill. Colleagues have been lobbied tremendously by their constituents to support the climate change bill. Davey was there at the photo shoot in the front row, looked as proud as anyone else. That's very nice to have the leader there for her private members bill. That's a nice, powerful endorsement from the party there. Does this mean he backs the bill? I will just say he was there. I'm going to go as far as say I would not say he would not be in that photo shoot if he wasn't in favour of the bill. How about Labour? I know some Labour MPs have backed it. Alex Shobble presented a version of the Climate and Nature Bill earlier this year with Oliver Baker and Clive Lewis co-sponsoring it this Wednesday. You'll see the full list of co-sponsors. We've got 11 from across the significant parties, which is fantastic. It comes to environmental laws. This has to transition party politics. We don't want to end up like the US, where the environment has become a politically divisive issue. Yeah, that's something Reform want to do. They want to make it a politically divisive issue. There are definitely challenges ahead. It may not sit easily with the current government because of it's a law that holds them accountable for meeting their targets on climate and nature. But it's not unprecedented like the Office of Budget Responsibility. The government has created bodies to scrutinise themselves before. I'm keen to have a conversation with government ministers, especially DEFRA and BTIS, about this. I'm a collaborative person and want to find a win-win situation for the government, for us as legislators, and for nature. If it passes, the bill says that nature will be measured on the path to recovery by 2030. 5 years isn't very long, is it? Response is, this government shows that when it wants to make something happen, it's willing to move very quickly. There are many examples from history that government can drag their feet, but when they're motivated, things can happen rapidly. When we look at climate and nature, we're approaching many tipping points. The WWF Living Planet reports talks about these tipping points after an instrumental change. That's the World Wildlife Fund, for those who don't know. Suddenly, the whole system tips dramatically. Every little thing we do to make a positive difference from one feather on one side of the scales. One day the scales will tip. There will be a massive outbreak of common sense. We will realise that our future of humanity absolutely depends on the future of nature, and that has to be our top priority. Is 1.5 degrees possible? Are you confident or hopeful? I don't claim to be a climate scientist. There's a lot of inertia and time lag built into climate systems. It may or may not be possible, but even if it isn't, it's not an excuse to give up. Every fraction of a degree that we can limit climate change makes a substantial difference to the future and the coming generations we face. We are where we are. We can only do what we can do from now on. Ideally, we have started reducing emissions 40 years ago, but until we reinvent a time machine, that's not an option. And I think it's why we can't go wrong by investing in a nature-based solution. Solar panels and wind turbines have played to part, but nature already provides us with powerful solutions, and there is no downside to nature-based solutions. That's where I'd like to put the emphasis. Given the choice between new woodlands or a field of solar panels, I choose new woodlands. I'd like to see the forests, grasslands, more living roots, and more trees in urban areas that also help reduce street temperatures. There is so much we can do that just doesn't draw more carbon from the atmosphere, but actually make people's lives better. And I believe we can have a healthier and happier planet. This was written by Joshua Mortimer there of Byline Times. Some very interesting questions and answers put to the Lib Dem MP, and I like our answers to them. Absolutely, I hope it becomes something. I really hope so. I wouldn't be surprised if many Greens endorsed it. I'm sure the Greens have their own bills that they've been putting, private members' bills that they put forward themselves, because obviously the Greens are known for pushing for the environment as well. I will say as well. So, very interesting piece there from Byline Times. Let me know what you guys thought of that. I think I really do hope that the Labour government does take heed of the warnings from this and responds accordingly to this from what Liberal Democrats and other MPs are saying. There will be many in the Labour government and Labour MPs who will also be pushing more for the need for change, for climate action. But as we said, obviously, when we looked at an earlier bill about how they are still going with a £22 billion carbon capture project, it's not exactly helping anyone, is it? So there are still some blockages in the way of this Labour government, that is for sure, you guys. So just before we head out, guys, I've got one more funny video for you guys. I hope you guys enjoyed this funny video. If you have been watching all the way through the premiere video, I hope you find the information useful and helpful to you. But I'm going to end with this funny video for you guys. This one is from two politicians on a date from the Foil and Arms YouTube channel. I hope you guys enjoy this one. Let me just this here. This one, I've only just heard this once, and it's quite funny. So I hope you guys enjoy it.
So how long have you been single?
Well, I had a disagreement with my party 2 years ago, and I've been independent ever since.
No, sorry, your relationship status. So what do you do for fun?
Well, I enjoy local funerals.
Oh, me too.
Walking, movies, and presently
I've been learning to play the piano.
Sorry, if I could just finish. Presently, I am starting to
The
learn...
piano is something that I've taken up recently, and I think the merits of it could be very applicable to the youth of this country. It is wonderful artistic merits, and if we could roll this out across the country, I think we would...
Excuse me, if you wouldn't mind.
This document I'm holding in my hand outlines in detail the items available for public consumption.
I have never seen that document before in my life, nor do I have prior knowledge of its contents.
Well, you probably want to look at it
Oh,
there,
yes,
John.
thanks
You
very
didn't
much,
get
yeah.
one, yeah?
No.
So you're both going for the salmon?
Aye.
Aye.
So the eyes have it. I would expect the salmon to be delivered on time and as promised.
And as we wait, I would expect something to snack upon.
These are bread and butter issues. Well, you left that toilet in some state.
It was the previous occupant that destroyed that toilet. I inherited that mess.
The quota of toilet paper has been far exceeded in that toilet, although none of it seems to have been used appropriately.
The bill, gentlemen.
€336,000.
Sure, you get a bike shed for that.
So who's picking up the bill?
The Irish taxpayer.
Of course.
Well, that was a fun evening.
Yes, I enjoyed your company.
Yes, likewise.
Yes. Well, I'm going left.
Oh, I'm going right.
Oh.
Yeah.
Nice. Well,
Yes, that's it.
yeah.
Head in.
Yes. yes.
After you.
No, after you.
No, after
no,
you.
Please.
I insist now. After
no,
you.
Go ahead.
Absolutely. No, I couldn't possibly.
No.
After no, I think
honestly,
no. Please no. I think you should.
I think you should. Head on,
need to go.
Head on it.
No.
You're getting in there. No.
You get in there. No. You get in there. Come on now.
Go on.
Just don't resist.
I just wanted to share that last bit, but yeah, do check out the Foil and Armed Hog, guys. And look, they've even got going to be New Zealand and Australia as well. Yeah, do check out their tour, guys. Go onto their YouTube channel, Foil and Arms. I'll have all the details there, guys. They do absolutely amazing stuff. Absolutely amazing stuff. So if you get a chance to go and see them live, please do, guys. I do strongly recommend them. Guys, I want to say a massive thank you if you have watched all the way from Regan's Newsround. What do you guys think of some of the stories we covered today? Talking about the repair bill from the NHS, the budget, and what could potentially be coming in that as well. Ministers about giving more powers to magistrates coming up. This is the assisting dying bill and the concerns rightfully so about it. Also talking about Martin Lewis over the buy now, pay back later as well. Ministers still accepting freebies apparently as well. From what a Labour peer saying that they should be a crime. Let me know your thoughts on that. And then finally, obviously, we're talking about the climate, about some of the private members' bill from the Liberal Democrat MP that could make or make not a difference to the climate. Let me know your thoughts and more about all these stories down in the comments section below. But just before I go, if you haven't already, please hit the like button. We greatly appreciate it. Share it across social media so others are notified of this video. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider subscribing because it really does help support the channel. And if you want to go one step further, financially support me and the work that I do here, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p, or join me on Rumble or Patreon for exclusive content on those platforms. So thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.